John chapter 11 begins with one of the most famous miracles Jesus ever performed. He raised a man named Lazarus from the dead. You've likely heard the story. But what I want to talk about is what happened right after Jesus brought Lazarus back to life. I want to look at how people reacted when they saw a dead man get up and walk out of his tomb. When we observe the responses from those who were present or had caught wind of what had happened, we can put them into two separate categories: believers and unbelievers. Both groups witnessed the same event, but had different reactions. And by the way, nothing's changed. Over 2,000 years later, those who respond to the words and works of Jesus can be divided into the same two groups. But we'll get to that. Back to our story. After Lazarus was brought back, many of the Jews that witnessed the event believed that Jesus was the Messiah as a result. Others did not believe, and the scripture tells us that they went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. So the chief priests and the Pharisees convened the Sanhedrin and said, "What are we going to do, since this man does many signs? If we let him continue in this way, everyone will believe in him. Then the Romans will come and remove both our place and our nation." One of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all. You're not considering that it is to your advantage that one man should die for the people, rather than the whole nation perish." The Sanhedrin was essentially the high council of all things religion. It was composed of 71 members total, 70 religious leaders, primarily Sadducees, but also some Pharisees, led by the high priest. It was the highest ruling authority among the Jews in Judea, and they did not like Jesus. Based on the conversation they had after hearing about Lazarus being raised from the dead, it's obvious that they had no intention of giving Jesus a chance. Their first response was, "If we don't stop him, everyone will believe in him." They didn't even stop to consider the miracle. A man had just been raised from the dead. But the hearts of the Pharisees were hard as stone, and their minds were set on maintaining their own power instead of recognizing the power of God that flowed through Jesus to bring the dead to life. You see, Israel was under the authority and power of Rome. But because Israel was not a threat, they were allowed to carry on their religious practices as long as they did not lead to rebellion against Rome. Jesus' miracles would often cause a disturbance, and if enough of the Jews decided to follow Jesus as their Messiah king, the religious leaders feared that the Roman army would take away their limited privileges of independence and self-rule, followed by the destruction of the temple and ultimately the nation. Caiaphas and his group of wealthy and educated elitists had sucked up to Romans enough to stay on fairly good terms with them. He was not going to let Jesus threaten the security of his position as the leader over Judea's religious life. He was too proud and too ruthless. Any threats to his power would be eliminated by whatever means necessary. For him, Jesus' death was not an if, but a when, where, and a how. Caiaphas made his position on the matter very clear with his final statement. "It is better for you that one man should die for the people, not that the whole nation should perish." He could not have been more right. He had no idea how true those words were. It seems ironic at first, but John clarifies that this isn't irony, it's prophecy. Though his intent was sinful, God used him to indicate that Jesus should die for the entire nation. And Caiaphas didn't think of it himself. He was inspired to say it. John didn't want his readers to miss the fact that Jesus' death, though it was intended by the Sanhedrin to spare Israel from physical destruction, was actually to spare Israel from a spiritual destruction. But Caiaphas and the other religious leaders would never know the life that Jesus came to give. Because of their appetite for power and personal freedom from the rulers that oppressed them, they would never get to experience the spiritual freedom that Jesus gave his life for, freedom from the enemy of their souls. They rejected him, and it cost them eternally. I mentioned earlier about the two different groups that are formed when people come face to face with Jesus: those who follow him and those who reject him, believers and unbelievers. There are numerous accounts in the gospel of how people responded to Jesus. And it's obvious which camp the Pharisees had joined, but I want to point out that the Pharisees were not the only group of people that hated Jesus. They get the most attention because of their religious positions, but according to the text, there were others who shared the Pharisees' hatred for Jesus and wanted to see him put to death. These people were quick to go to the Pharisees and fuel the fire, so to speak. This is important to me because it gives me an even deeper appreciation for Jesus and his fortitude to stay on mission in the face of such rejection. Jesus didn't just face opposition when he was in Jerusalem amongst the Pharisees and scribes, but everywhere he went. He was constantly ministering to the public, and though many of them believed, there were always those who didn't. Imagine yourself in his shoes for a minute. Have you ever been rejected by someone? Rejection is a hard thing to deal with, and the emotional and psychological effects are heavy. As a leader, I know from my own experience that even if 9 out of 10 people accept my leadership, I feel the weight of the one who doesn't more than the joy of the 9 that do. It's just the nature of this fallen world and a fallen mankind. We were wired with an essential need for acceptance, so we feel it when we don't have it. Jesus demonstrated what it really means to rely on God when it comes to having our needs met. In the face of continual rejection by the people around him, he was always aware of and confident of his acceptance by the Father. Something we would all benefit from being reminded of. I'll close with something for you to think about. It would be easy for a believer to hear this lesson and feel like it doesn't apply to them because, well, they're in the believers group. But even Peter rejected Jesus. Though Peter is most definitely in heaven with our Lord today, he allowed his fear and anxiety to influence him to the point of denying Jesus 3 times. My point is, even though we are eternally secure in Christ, there is an enemy prowling around like a lion, seeking to devour us. And his primary goal is to get us to reject some aspect of God's will for our lives. If we're not careful, we'll begin to share the same desires for power and independence that destroyed Caiaphas. The devil may not be able to rob us of our eternal security in heaven, but he can most certainly rob us of our ability to be of any value to God's kingdom here on earth, right now. If you're in the believers group, then congratulations, you are seated with Christ in heaven. Just be sure that your life here on earth accurately reflects that truth.